Christians often talk about being in the world, but not of the world. You might have heard that phrase before. What does it mean? Well, followers of Jesus, we get this from his words in John chapter 17. And what the essence of it is we're trying to find a way to, how do I do this life? How do I do the things that I need to do, like go shopping, like pay the bills, like go to work, raise my kids, buy clothes, eat food? How do I do the essentials of life? How do I live in this world, but without being colonized by it, without being negatively influenced by the world that I'm trying to influence as a follower of Jesus? How do I do that? It's a challenge. That's why Jesus prayed this over us in John chapter 17, because it's a challenge. For those of you in high-powered, high-paying jobs, how do you live as a follower of Jesus without being colonized by that environment of wealth and of power and of bigger homes and better cars? How do you influence that environment for good without being colonized by it? For you students, how do you impact your classmates, your university, your campus with the gospel of Jesus? How do you live differently in that world without being negatively influenced by that environment, by those people, or by those ideologies? You parents at home with little ones, how do you be a follower of Jesus through those nappies and tears years? And for the elderly, how do you live as a follower of Jesus for the glory of God in your final years, maybe even in a rest home? These are really important questions to answer. Really important questions for any follower of Jesus, no matter how old you are, no matter how long you've been following him, to answer. How am I different? How am I ought to live in this time and in this place and with what God has given me? And this is what we're exploring through the Sermon on the Mount. This is Jesus' most famous message where he is laying out, this is how I want you to live. This is how my followers are going to be different. And we started last week with looking at the Beatitudes, these 8 statements of blessed are those who. And it's not a description of the kind of people that God will save. No, it's a description of the character of the kind of people who have come to live under the lordship of Jesus. And as we move beyond the Beatitudes into the next part of the sermon today, we're going to encounter 2 metaphors that Jesus uses to describe his disciples. 2 metaphors to use that are very common and that I think over the last 2,000 years have lost some of their potency with us. What are they? They are salt and light. And so let's see how Jesus describes his followers in this way. Join me in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in their house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You are salt. You are the salt of the earth, Jesus says. And if you're like me, maybe you've heard that phrase maybe a few hundred times, and you might think, what a lovely phrase. That's a lovely little idiom. But the weight of that, the salt, this word salt, would have landed on Jesus' ears, or the ears of Jesus' listeners, quite differently back then. You know, for one thing, we're on the other side of the Industrial Revolution, where the potential for harvesting, distributing, manufacturing salt just went through the roof. Now, hundreds of millions of tons of the stuff is manufactured and shipped around the globe annually. There is no lack, no want for salt in 2026. But first century Israel and the Roman Empire, salt was precious. It was a precious and expensive commodity. Roman soldiers were paid what was called a salarium. They were paid a salarium, that word coming from the Latin word sal, meaning salt. That's where we get our word salary from. They were paid a salarium, which was a particular payment for which they could go and buy salt. this essential commodity, this expensive commodity. They were given a certain amount of money to go and buy it. This is where we get the phrase that someone is worth their salt. It's where it comes from. Salt was precious, it was expensive, and it was necessary. And now remember that Jesus is also speaking to his Jewish followers. How would the word salt have landed on Jewish ears back at this time? Well, they would have heard covenants language from the Torah. This comes from Leviticus, where the laws are being laid out about rites and rituals for God's followers, the Israelites. He says to them, season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Salt all your offerings. In Numbers 18, whatever is set aside from the holy offerings the Israelites present to the Lord, I give to you and your sons and daughters as your perpetual share. It is an everlasting covenant of salt before the Lord for both you and your offspring. So these Jewish listeners would have heard salt and gone, man, this is about dedication to the Lord. This is about devotion to the Lord. They would have heard expensive commodity, precious, and they would have heard covenant language. The other thing about salt at this time was that it was absolutely vital for flavoring food and for preserving meat. No fridges, no chili bins, none of that back then. If meat wasn't salted, it went bad. It was crucial for survival in this time. And so they hear these two things. They hear covenant and they hear survival. They hear expense. They hear preciousness. And so when we hear salt of the earth, today we would call someone a salt of the earth kind of guy if they were, they were really nice. They were reliable. They were hardworking. They were resourceful. You kind of meet like a Fred Dagg meets Mr. Rogers, like a hardy Kiwi guy who is very, very pleasant at the same time. That is not what Jesus is getting at here. When he says, you are the salt of the earth, he's meaning you are my covenant-keeping, decay-preventing, flavor-enhancing ambassadors who are being sent out into the world for a purpose. It's a mission. It's a gritty invitation to get involved in the world. John Stott said there is a weight here to Jesus' words. It's like he's saying, you and only you are the salt of the earth. What a mission, what a mantle, what a responsibility we have been given. It's like Jesus is saying, you must not fail. You must not fail. The world is decaying and you and only you are the salt. And you have to go and be what I've made you to be. And so he says, you are salt. Don't lose it. Don't lose it. He says, don't lose your saltiness. And he labors the point and he says, what happens if salt stops being salty? Can it regain its saltiness again? It's kind of ridiculous language, a ridiculous thing Jesus is saying. He's essentially saying if salt stops being what it is, what will it be? Well, it won't be salt. And Jesus is saying exactly. In his day, salt had more impurities than we find in our salt today. A kind of mixture with grain and bits of dirt, so that sometimes when moisture was introduced, that the actual tangy, salty sodium chloride could be removed, and all you're left with is essentially dust. And Jesus is saying, if the salt is gone and all you're left with is dust, are you going to put that on your food? Is that going to preserve your meat? No, it is absolutely useless, and so you just throw it away. Jesus says, don't lose your saltiness, because he knows there is going to be the temptation to water down our potency. Whether through compromise with the world, whether through sin, whether through idolatry, whether it's a slow drift towards apathy and being colonized by the world because we haven't rooted ourselves in a Christian community, we haven't rooted ourselves in his word or with these daily spiritual disciplines that remind us of who we are connected to. Jesus knows that there is a risk for us to lose our saltiness. And he says, you are, listen to the language here, you are the salt of the earth. Not can be, not should be, not someday will be, but are. He uses identity language here. And so for you listening to this today, You are the salt of the earth. You are his covenant-keeping, decay-preventing, flavor-enhancing ambassador in the world to accomplish his kingdom purposes. You have this identity, no matter your age, no matter how long you've been saved for, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter how your economic employment, you are. You are. This is the identity he has given us, and what a wonderful role. To say we are salt is to say that the world is bland. It needs flavor. It needs God's flavors brought into it. To say that we are salt is to say that the world is decaying. There is moral decline that we need to arrest. We need to be rubbed into society to help arrest this decay. I love this quote from John Stott. He says, when society goes bad, Christians tend to throw up our hands in pious horror and reproach the non-Christian world. But should we not rather reproach ourselves? No one blames unsalted meat for going bad. It can't do anything else. The real question to ask is, where is the salt? Where is the salt? Have you lost your saltiness? Have you forgotten what and who you are? Are you salt? Are you in the grinder, pride of place in the kitchen, ready for God to use on whatever dish he is creating? You're like, I'm ready. I'm available. I'm ready to go. Pour me out. Or maybe you've become the Chinese five spice, relegated to the back of the pantry somewhere, brought out perhaps once a year, exiled, forgotten, and past its use by date. The invitation today is to remember to be what you are. You might have put yourself in the back of the pantry. There might have been some compromise, some failure, whatever reason you have ended up relegating yourself to the pantry as forgotten Chinese five spice. The invitation today is Jesus is saying to you, remember what you are. You are salt. Come back out here. Come out of the back of the pantry. Get back in that salt shaker. I've got work for you to do. I want you to be what you are. I want you to bring God's flavor. I want you to prevent decay. I've got work for you to do, my salt. You know, we look back in history and we see phenomenal descriptions of this. I think about Martin Luther King Jr. and what he did to prevent the decay, to arrest the decay of racial segregation in the United States. I think about William Wilberforce and just that huge outpouring of salt that he was to stop the decay of the slave trade. Think about John Kirby and what he did to launch Christians Against Poverty and the incredible work that has done to slow the decay and to bring God's flavor into people's lives who are struggling under debt and hardship. And then I think about friends of mine who last year, as they were taking their kid to school, the teacher opened up to them about a really painful relational breakdown she was experiencing, causing her agony. So they went home, they put a care package together for her and they gave it to her the next day. It meant the world to her. It's like they're just sprinkling a little bit of God's kingdom into that woman's life, bringing his flavors into her world. Jesus says, you are salt, don't lose it. He also says, you are light. You are light. He reaches for another easily understood metaphor for his listeners. The Jews would have just loved hearing this because light was a wonderful metaphor that they used. Light represented God's glory, his kingdom, his wisdom, his understanding. It was a picture of righteousness. When he says, you are the lights of the world, the Jews would have gone, yeah, we're with this. We get you on this. This is wonderful. Jesus says, you're the light of the world. And he goes for another metaphor and says a town on a hill cannot be hidden. And they would have got this too. Jerusalem, a city built on a hill, but Jerusalem was meant to be a place that brought light to the nations. But it had just become another corrupt city emanating more darkness than light. The metaphor hits the same for us. It doesn't need to be over-explained. You need light to illuminate the darkness. Back then, they had candles, they had lamps. Without them, no running electricity. It was so necessary for them. Light was necessary for sight. And Jesus uses the same language, this identity language, as he did for salt. He says, you are the light of the world. You and only you are the light of the world. And he is calling into mind here the fact that we are image bearers of God. We are made to reflect his glory to the world. Wherever we go, we are to be blazing torches, shining God's light, revealing his goodness into a world plunged into darkness. And so he says, you are light, so don't hide it. Don't hide it. He knows that there will be a tendency for us to want to hide this light. He says, no one lights a lamp and then kind of puts it under a bowl. Again, he's reaching for a ridiculous language for his listeners to go, that's just stupid. Why would you do that? He says, exactly. You light a lamp because you want to be able to see. And so you put it on its stand so it can illuminate the whole house. And Jesus says, you are light. You are light. And so shine. He says, shine so that people may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. He says, illuminate this world with your obedience to God, with your humble, sacrificial, generous good needs. Illuminate this world with your beatitude life, your poorness in spirit, your meekness, your mercifulness, your peacemakingness, your hunger and thirst for righteousness, so that even if people don't like you, even if they reject the gospel, even if they persecute you, they cannot deny the glory of God when they see what good deeds are being done in his name. And he says, don't hide it, because we'll be tempted to. Whether through fear of persecution, fear of awkward conversations, fear of what people will think of us, perhaps even a sense of false humility of, I don't want to attract any attention to myself. There are many ways that we choose not to take those opportunities before us to shine and bring glory to our Father in heaven. And yet as I look around the world, I look around our church, I look around the nations, phenomenal examples of people shining brightly. In November last year, I had the joy of taking a team of 7 wonderful people from across our locations to Thailand on a short-term missions exposure trip. And one of the things we wanted to do was, wherever we could, share a little bit of light. And we thought maybe a simple way of doing that would be to have a message on the back of our t-shirts, this t-shirt, that showed the light. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to talk to you backwards. But this on the back of the shirt is Thai script, and it is Matthew 11:28, where Jesus shares that anyone can come to him. He says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest for your soul. And we thought, man, if we're just walking around, maybe there's going to be some Thai people who are under that weight and darkness of Buddhism, who will just see this little message of hope. Maybe it will shine a light for them. That was something that we thought we could do. But the people and the NGOs and the missionaries that we met were doing amazing work, shining light in the darkness. We spent time with an NGO called Nightlight in Bangkok, and their whole heart is to go into the red light districts of Bangkok and share the gospel, bring women to freedom, give them alternative means of employment, bring them out of that horror, that darkness of the sex trade. We spent some time with an NGO called Tamar down in Pattaya in the south of Thailand. And this is a photo of our team in a prayer and worship room. And what you can't see from that photo is the location that we're in. We are in the heart, in the middle of the dodgiest, most ruthless street in a town of 60,000 sex workers. And we were praising and worshiping. We went up on the roof after this and we declared God's goodness and we declared his kingdom over that industry and over that place. And organizations like Nightlight and Tamar, phenomenal work, shining a light into that horrific industry. And then we went to the north. We spent some time with Project Justice. Project Justice are working tirelessly to shine, to reflect the love of the Father into this wonderful, poor, rural hill tribe community. They have just loved this community over the last 8 years, in a community that is rife with drug and alcohol abuse, where they said children were spending their days sniffing glue. But they've built a church there. This NGO has employed a pastor there, and in the past year, they have baptized 50 people. They are shining a light into the darkness. Jesus says, you are salt, and don't lose it. You are light. Don't hide it. He says you need to press into the decay and the darkness. You see, the thing about salt and light is that they are distinctive. They are distinctive. They are made. They only made to have an impact on food and on darkness. And it's the same with followers of Jesus. You know, you can see a bag of salt and you can say that is salt, but it's not really doing anything. It's not doing what it was made to do. You could look at a light bulb on in the middle of the day and you can say, yeah, that's light, but it's not really performing the function for which it was created. I think in the same way, you can look at church, Christians gathered together on a Sunday, and you can go, yeah, that's church. Those are Christians, but they're not really doing the thing that they were created to do. I heard a message last year from a pastor in the US, and what he said struck me. He said, so often we can think of our Sunday gathering as like the game, as the main thing that we're meant to do. He said, it's not the game, it's the huddle. It's the timeout huddle that is called in the basketball game for us to regroup and to connect and go, hey, how are we doing? What's the plan? And then you get back out there into our lives, and that is the game. That is the world that we need to press into. That is the world we need to press into. Because it's the mess that Jesus came into. He wants us to press into the brokenness and the pain and the darkness of our world because it's what he did. He wants us to be what we are because it's what he has enabled us to be. Jesus didn't stay in heaven enjoying the perpetual glory, the unity he had with the Father. He humbled himself and came to walk with us, to dwell with us, to be part of our mess, to enter our decay and our brokenness and our darkness, and flavor it, the flavors of heaven, and to arrest our moral decay. Jesus came to be salt, and he came to be a light. What did Isaiah say about the coming Messiah? He said, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. Jesus said it about himself in John 8. He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus said a city on a hill cannot be hidden. There'll be a beacon of hope and light. Jesus was crucified on a hill for the sins of the world, and that act has been a light that has penetrated the darkness of every part of this globe across the last 2,000 years. You know, like a cosmic chef, I think God dips his finger into the world and he says, yeah, it needs salt. And Jesus says, hey, you're up. My people, this is your time. God looks like a cosmic coal miner into the mine shaft of our world, and he says, that needs light. And Jesus said, I got the people for the job. And he looks at you and he looks at me and he says, you're up. This is what you are made for. This is your time. And so he says, get involved. Get amongst it. Get out into this world. Press into the places where there is darkness and pain and brokenness. And guys, I know, I feel this when I read headlines and I look at the problems of the world. It can be overwhelming. Where do I start? There is famine and there are wars and there are problems and there is injustice and there is economic crises. And what about the climate? And God, where do I even begin? I think you can begin with two questions. One, where has he placed you? And two, what has he given you? Acts 17 says that God has placed each of us in a certain point in history for a certain reason. He has appointed you to your time and your place to be what you are. And he's given you the ability to be salt and light here and now. And so where are you? Where has he placed you? Yes, your street, your flat, your home, your workplace. Who is around you? Where has he put you? Where are the things that you can flavor with the kingdom of God? What decay is present that you can help arrest? Where is there conflict where you can bring peace? Where is there judgmentalism and condemnation where you can bring mercy? Where is there someone mourning who you can come alongside and mourn with? Where can you sprinkle the flavors of heaven in the world around you? Where has he put you? And secondly, what has he given you? Has he given you time? Are you time rich? Has he given you resources, connections, influence? What do you have? How can these be used to reflect the glory of God, to shine light into dark places? What is happening in the world that burdens you? Has he given you a burden for something? God might be calling you to overseas mission, to fight human trafficking, to plant churches, to eradicate disease, to bring healthcare, to fight injustice, to educate, to lift up the plight of women in places where they are downtrodden. He might be putting you somewhere across the global map to shine his light, and to bring relief. And he's probably asking you to do something locally. Even if there is that future hope, that goal of mission, he's asking you to do something here and now. He might be asking you to get involved in supporting refugees in your local community, to foster children, to raise financial literacy, to support pregnant teenagers, to be a friend to the lonely. There is darkness in our world. There are pockets of pain and suffering where God is saying, I need my people in there. I need them in there. Jesus wants us to be what we are. Friends, you are salt. You are light. You need to get out there and press into the darkness and the decay of the world. It's a remarkable, wonderful mission that He's given us. What a responsibility. I can tell you it will be the ride of your life, the biggest joy, the most enjoyment, and yes, difficulty and challenge, but the growth and the wonder and the intimacy I've enjoyed with God have come in those moments where I have pressed into darkness and I've pressed into the decay. And God takes you on a ride, and He takes you on an adventure of faith and redemption in the world, and He wants that for you. God bless you, my family. Let's be what we are, salt and light to a broken and decaying world. Amen.